What is going on, Panther Lair? We are back talking about the Pittsburgh Panthers road loss to the NC State Wolfpack this past Wednesday night. Now, I want to talk about the performance of Amsal Delalic because I don't think I've dedicated a lot of voice overlays to him this season, but after playing 25 minutes, scoring 9 points on 4 of 6 from the field, in which he also committed 3 turnovers and picked up 4 personal fouls, I thought this was a pretty decent sample to have an opportunity to dive in a little bit more. Before we go, though, I do want to say that I do fashion Delalic to be a plus player. I think there's a lot of potential here because he is a listed 6'8" with live dribble, playmaking, and shot creating feel and ability, and I think that's pretty unique on the team. I also am very bullish on his outside shooting improving even with a higher volume in the future. You know, you look at him this year, only 29 attempts, but he is shooting 37.9% of those. I remember after Cam Johnson's first year at Pitt, I proclaimed him to be a plus shooter, and I think I got shredded on a couple forums and on Twitter/X a bunch of times. But if you really look at Johnson's sample from that first year, he only had 23 attempts and was shooting 34.8% at the end of the year. So I do feel like Delalic is trending in that direction as a player who's also a little bit taller, who does not have anything mechanically wrong with his stroke. So with that, let's dive in and take a look at the performance. Now, I do think that Delalic is really good with the ball in his hands. He has a very controlled, purposeful dribble and is able to leverage his size and frame to work his way into the paint. I think you can see that right there. Again, I believe him to be a plus outside shooter, 6'8". That's much harder to contest than a player that's 6'3". And if you look at this here, and I'm going to wait till he makes this shot, but this is probably, I don't know, less than 5 designed baseline out of bounds plays that Pitt has run this year. Okay, like last year they ran pretty much one every time, either for Bub Carrington or predominantly Blake Hinson. So you can see that there is upside to having him on the floor, and that clearly Pitt understands that he can bring something to the table, at least on the offensive end, with his patience and his shot-making ability. You'll see that again here as he takes a nice pump fake just to get his defender in the air. This probably is a foul, maybe if he drives harder into the defender, but is able to make this one-legged semi-contested shot. I mean, that's not luck. That comes from a person who has familiarity in feel for the game, knowing how he can get his shot off at various angles, with various footing, various levels of being contested. I mean, this is a guy who has a lot of offensive polish when it comes to shot making and, again, making plays with a live dribble. But we're going to dive into why I think he's being pulled off the floor more, and I think in some ways it is valid. So despite all of the upside, I think that the processing is pretty good. I think the decision making could use some work. What he understands when he sees this is, okay, I'm not going to maybe go over the top here for Guillermo Diaz-Graham. We have help coming. Because these defenders are a little bit stacked, he sees that Ishmael Leggett is going to be open in the weak side corner, or what he thinks is going to be open, and that the help is going to converge on a potential pass into Guillermo Diaz-Graham. So he's processing, this is what's going on, this is what's available. But the decision to make this pass isn't great. Now, you could make the case, okay, well, the processing isn't super fast, or there's a disconnect between one of the two. And maybe that's valid. But I do think he generally sees the floor well, and he processes things pretty quickly. I think sometimes he just makes the wrong decision. And this is an example of one such decision. But here is the upside of that in the same sequence. So here he is receiving the ball on the run. Ish Leggett clearly open right now, right? So there's one defender sinking into the paint, trying to defend 2 players. But Delalic drives right at him, forcing this defender to commit on potentially taking a charge or protecting the rim. He does not give the ball up here. He takes that extra dribble, extra moment just to suck in the defender. This is pretty good feel for a guy who, again, has only lost 254 collegiate minutes. And then we know Leggett, good fake, hits a 3. So this is probably the downside, and this is one of the reasons I don't think he can stay on the floor for a long time, and to some degree that's valid. Now, where Pitt is in the season, you can make maybe a different argument that he should be able to play through some of these more. There's an argument to be made that in the middle of the season that he should have been able to play through more of these mistakes, but regardless, he is making them. So we're going to take a look here. Pitt did a pretty okay job of trying to get Austin the ball in the post. I think we saw this with like Audi's Tony a couple years ago. They would do things like that, occasionally Blake Hinson. So it looks like they're trying to come back to find other ways for guys to take advantage of either their athleticism or their size or both to be able to get looks at the rim. You just can't make a pass from this far away. It just, with this much air underneath it, it just allows Ben Middlebrooks to come over here and just snuff this out. Again, it's an idea like, hey, this is a mismatch. I want to get the ball into Austin, but the reality is this just can't be the decision we make given the distance and the amount of air that he's going to put under this. And then on the other end, he's not really a good point of attack defender. I think his closeouts here, you can see, I mean, he's circling around the closeout. Again, probably not a great feel for where this guy was when this pass was made. Maybe that's not really the biggest sin there, but in terms of his closeout, he closes out really hard here, and then the minute this defender takes a dribble to his left, it's just going to be a blocking foul. So there are things that he needs to work on defensively, particularly his off-ball recognition and kind of his choppiness and discipline in terms of how he is closing out. I think he would be better served trying to use a little bit more of his length rather than trying to match guys by living in their jersey with foot speed, because I think he's going to lose in a lot of those situations. But again, those things come with time. You have to kind of be able to fail in those situations, go back, watch film, reinforce that in practice, and then apply it in a game. And he hasn't really had those opportunities. So while there is a ton of offensive upside, which to be honest, I think should outweigh some of the defensive woes at this point in the year, he certainly has some issues that he needs to work on. But again, I think overall, he brings such a unique skill set to this team that at least for the remainder, 2, 3, 4 games, however many Pitt plays, should they accept like an NIT bid scenario, I think that Delalic should be getting 20 minutes, and I think we're going to see some continual improvement from him.